Welcome to The Grace Way, a program from Grace Baptist Academy. Each episode is designed to share the heart and vision of our school through thought-provoking conversations, biblical truth, and meaningful insight. Whether we are answering your questions, outlining our philosophy, hearing from our staff or other professionals, our goal is to strengthen the partnership between home and school, all for the glory of God. And now, here's your host, Craig Carpenter.
Welcome to episode 5 of The Grace Way. Today we are privileged to have on Mississippi United States Senate candidate Mrs. Sarah Adlakha. Sarah Adlakha is a physician, author, and small business leader living on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. She trained in psychiatry and later stepped away from clinical practice to help build and manage her family's medical practice, overseeing its financial and operational growth for more than a decade. In recent years, she has also worked on a large multi-specialty real estate development focused on expanding access to healthcare and local economic growth. A mother of 3 and longtime Mississippi resident, Sarah has deep experience navigating healthcare systems, public education, and small business challenges, and is committed to principled, accountable public service. She is currently a candidate for the U.S. Senate and will be on the Republican primary ballot on March 10th. Mrs. Adlakha, it is really great to have you on today. Thank you so much for being here. And really jumping right in, I just gotta ask, for such we have a small school here, and just the reach of our podcast that's just simply for our school students. What led you to committing to being here today?
Well, because you asked, mainly. No, there's other reasons. So for me, I love to see students engage in civics. So I think it's so important to get students involved, whether it's just community, any kind of community leadership roles, and to be able to see somebody who's actually stepped into politics and is running for a statewide office, I think will be something that they can, take with them and see, in getting yourself involved and how important it is to get out there and to really understand and to learn about how not just our country works, but our state and our communities. And I just think it's a good way. I just think it's so important to get the younger generation involved.
I sincerely appreciate you speaking with some of our high school students today and for agreeing to be with us. And thanks for satisfying my curiosity on that one. One of the things that I sent you in advance of this episode was just a short questionnaire where I was trying to get to know more about you. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that really blessed me to be able to read was your salvation testimony. And I would like for the students of our school to be able to hear that.
Oh, for sure. So when I was in high school, I think I was a sophomore in high school. I was about 15 years old. And I was a very good student. I got good grades and I played sports. And I think on the outside, my life probably looked just fine to most people. But there was definitely something missing in my life. I didn't have a very strong friend group. But it wasn't even that. It wasn't just friends. I felt kind of incomplete. And it didn't matter what I did, how much I worked, how much I, always trying to impress my parents and get good grades and be the best basketball player or volleyball player. And I just felt just something lacking. And I had been raised in the church. And I think sometimes when you're raised from a really young age in the church, you don't really develop kind of your own relationship with God. I think that sometimes it takes stepping away from that to be able to see just how important it is to have that personal relationship and your own relationship with God. And I very distinctly remember being at a Fellowship for Christian Athletes meeting. I was part of the Fellowship for Christian Athletes. And I remember being at the meeting, and one of the coach that was speaking that day, she wasn't my coach, but she was talking about kind of that hole that a lot of us have. And I don't know if she was referencing just as an adolescent, that a lot of kids go through that, where you feel like you just don't fit in or just something's missing. But, she talked about how when she was around my age, when she was in high school, how when she committed her life to Jesus, she felt like she really, that hole closed, she felt like a whole person. And I just remember I just remember feeling so heard and seen, and in that moment just committing myself to Jesus and having that my own personal relationship with Jesus that was not just a part of being a member of a church or being a member of, my religious community, but actually having my own individual relationship with Jesus.
Amen. Praise the Lord. Now, aside from your salvation, were there any particular circumstances or events in your upbringing that really kind of molded you into who you are today?
It's funny. There isn't one moment in my life or one thing, that happened in my life that I can go back and point to. I would say it was just kind of the overall nature of how I was raised. I was the youngest of 5 children. I grew up in a very kind of hectic household, very busy. And it was during the 80s, I was one of those latchkey kids, the ones who just kind of run crazy. You're much younger than me, so you probably don't know what I'm talking about. But, back then we were allowed to do whatever we wanted. And there was nobody telling me where I needed to be, or there were no cell phones. Nobody was checking up on us. And
it certainly is a different world today.
It's completely different. But I do remember, and maybe it's just kind of in hindsight that I see it. I don't know if I really felt it at the time, but I do remember looking back and, as a mother, my kids were raised a lot differently. Maybe, I'm definitely not a helicopter mom, but, maybe I did spend a little bit too much time hovering over them. But I do remember feeling like, oh, gosh, well, why didn't my parents sit down and do homework with me? I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me to get C's and D's when I was very, very young, because there really wasn't anybody like standing over me and do this and do this. But what I think really has benefited me from that is my resilience, is to be able to say, I didn't have to have somebody standing over me in order to make me do the things that I need to do. Now, I didn't always do the things I needed to do when I was younger, but as I got older, I realized that nobody's going to stand over you and make you do these things. It's when you're an adult. I mean, you have to develop that on your own. You have to develop your independence and your resilience. And if you want people to be able to count on you, then you have to be able to do it on your own. And so I think that's something that I took from my childhood, even though it might not be something that is very obvious or apparent or one specific thing I can look back at and say, this is why I'm this way. I think it was just kind of generally how I was raised.
Now, expounding more on that, you had mentioned, I believe earlier, that you did pretty well in school and kind of like the lead up to your salvation testimony. But then you just mentioned that you got C's and D's as a young child.
I did, yes.
What was kind of like the circumstance, or what kind of started the shift away from the average performance more towards probably some sort of effort and hard work and organization? I don't know, but what was it for you that kind of started that shift?
It was, when I was younger, I think for me, when I switched schools when I was a sophomore, and I went from a public school to a private Christian school, and it made a huge difference for me. And it was really, finding my way to God was one of the things that really helped me, and having that community around me. It wasn't so much that I, anything changed with my life or my home life or anything like that. But it was very, when I changed schools, and maybe it was kind of a fresh start idea, but it was this idea of, well, why can't that be me? When I would look at other people and it was, oh, well, they were in the beta club and they were on the honor roll, and I had never been that child before. And I felt like, is it because I can't be that child, or is it because I just didn't try hard enough, or I didn't realize that I could be that person? And it was kind of a little shift in the way I saw things that really pushed me to say, well, I'm going to try. I mean, I can do it. Kind of like I said when we were talking earlier, well, if that person can do it, why can't I? And that was the point at which I really started turning things around and saying, like, this is going to be the avenue I'm going to take, and that's kind of how have lived my life since then.
It really is neat to see the way the Lord kind of had his hand and your correlation between your relationship with the Lord, which would have started right around the time you switched schools, over to, how that applied to the rest of the areas of your life.
Yes.
One of the goals of today's episode is really just to kind of expose the students to maybe what it's like to run for political office. One of the things that you mentioned earlier in the classroom when we were talking to the high school students was the fact that you've had a multitude of different jobs. And so I guess the question I have for you is, it's very simple, but what qualifies someone to run for office? What qualifications does someone need to run for office? There's there's an age limit for the president. That's 35, but that's just about the only qualification that somebody needs to run for president. So, of course, there are others. What do you think the average voter is looking for in somebody who's running for office?
That's a good question, and like you said, obviously there are paper qualifications that you have to run for certain offices, but I don't think that there's a particular resume that that people really look for. I don't think it's always been that way. I think in the past it was very much were you brought up in politics? What kind of positions have you had? And we see this still in Mississippi politics a lot. It's you need to start at the bottom and you need to work your way up, and then somebody will tell you when it's your turn to take the next step. And if you don't toe the line, you're not going to be supported. But I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in that. And I don't think that our founders intended for us to have career politicians. I really think that the intention was to pull together a group of people from all walks of life. And so for me, what I look for when I am looking at a candidate is, what is your life experience? You can look at all the different things of, who you are as a person. And sometimes that's very important to some people. Are you a Christian? Are you married? Do you have children? There's a lot of those kind of personal questions. But when you're looking at what are your qualifications for this specific job, I think a lot of people are now looking at, what have you done with your life? What kind of life experiences do you have, whether it's in the workplace? How have you managed those positions? Have you worked in complex systems? Have you worked in broken systems? Have you worked with people who don't agree with you? How do you navigate those disagreements? And so for me, that's one of the things that I look at. Obviously you're looking at who aligns with your policy positions. But if you have multiple people who are aligning with your policy positions, it's, to me, and I think that what we're seeing is a little bit of a shift in that, is people are starting to look at what can this person bring to the table?
Now, so for you're currently developing land, you've been a doctor, things like that. From a outsider's perspective, sort of successful in the business realm, both you and your husband. Why jump into politics now?
Yeah, that I know. I'm not sure. No, I'm just kidding. I have, for me, this is one of the things, I was talking about in your classroom. My life, for the most part, has been guided by where I think God wants me. It hasn't always been that way. I have been a very headstrong person. And so when I was much younger, it was always, this is what I want to do. This is my plan for my life. And even when I knew that God was having, kind of pushing me into a different area, it was really hard for me to go against what I really wanted.
What did you really want, by the way?
Well, I'll tell you, when I went to medical school, I really did want to go to medical school. And I felt like, I felt like God was pushing me into service. I've always felt that way. I've always felt that I should have, that my, where I am best suited is in the role of service in whatever capacity that might be. And so medicine was definitely something that I felt called to do. When my children, my oldest kids were about 4 years old, I took a step that that I really didn't want to take at the time. And I stepped away from medicine so that I could homeschool my kids. And it was the greatest decision that I ever made.
So this was more of as an adult is when the shift started to
Absolutely.
occur. Oh, wow.
Absolutely. So it's been a struggle. And as I get older, I am more willing to kind of let go of the things that I want or the goals that I had for myself and be able to say, this is what I'm being called to do. And so, yes, so for sure, I mean, I won't say that, even as a teenager in those things, I could say, oh, I think this is where what I'm being called to do. But it's hard when you're young and you have an ego and things that you want, and to say, but I can do this. I don't have to go that route, even if you feel like you're being led to go that route. And so it's taken a lot for me to be able to step up and say, and to really recognize what I'm being called to do, and to step out of my comfort zone, and away from things that I would prefer to be doing, to say that this is where I know I'm being called. And this is one of those areas. And I had this conversation with my husband before I announced that I was going to run, and he was a little bit surprised when I came to him and said, I think I want to run for the U.S. Senate.
I think I would be surprised if my wife came and told me that she was going to run wants to run for U.S. Senate.
Yeah, no, it was a bit of a shock to him, and it was, okay, well, let's think about this. But it was, in that moment when I had been going through so many different things, and I've been running his practice, his medical practice. So I deal with insurance companies all the time. I've been doing this for decades. Dealing with health insurance companies one way or another. We had been working on a development. We were having a lot of problems with government restrictions and government overreach. And it was like everything just went back to the overreach of the government and the brokenness of the system. And as I was fighting my way through it, I started helping other people navigate their own way back, through these systems. So, for me, it was helping people get medications approved or, procedures approved through their insurance company, because I had so much experience doing it that I have learned how to navigate so many broken systems. But then I started thinking, why I could spend all this time teaching people how to get through these systems and how to navigate them and how to get the things that they need, or I can step in and try to make a change. And so for me, it was very overwhelming and daunting to even think about it. But, as I talked to my husband and we prayed about it and we talked about it, and he said, you're going to regret not trying. I know it seems like an insurmountable task, but even if I don't get to where I'm trying to get right now, I know that there's a reason I'm here, and I know that it will be revealed to me. I know that God will reveal it to me, and I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
That's one of the things we remind the kids, about all the time is very rarely will you regret just going for something, especially, of course, if it's in the Lord's will. Even it doesn't matter what the outcome will be.
Right.
It's really about the only regret, looking back, for me personally, the only regrets that I have in my life would be ones where I didn't give the best effort that I could have given. Yes. Or, and I'm grateful to say there haven't been very many of those times, or the taking a risk or trying to take advantage of an opportunity, not following the Lord's leading. Those would be where the regrets would come from.
Absolutely.
And it really is interesting to hear, somebody say the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me that, and I'm sure, and maybe you could speak to this, but the shift didn't occur till you were an adult.
Yes.
So you were saved in church, I would assume, walking with the Lord, and still about, after even 2 children.
Yes.
You still had not completely surrendered to the Lord. Yes. And I'm sure you wish you would have done something like that sooner.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But I think that's a struggle that a lot of people go throughout their entire lives. I don't think that, at least for me it is. And I know, I can imagine that for a lot of people, even when you are an adult, you have there's God's will, and then there's your will, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and the things that you want to do. And it's like, sometimes you just push a little bit. Well, maybe this really is what God wants me to do. And maybe if I just push it a little further, he'll reveal it to me that this is really where he wants me to go.
You really have to make that decision to follow the Lord every single day.
Every single day.
It's not just once.
Yes.
So, Joshua said it in Joshua 24. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that decision, he didn't just get to say it once and then walk away.
No, it's
from
constant.
it. He had to do it. He had to do it all the time. Now, can you describe the most challenging day of your campaign?
Oh gosh. I don't know that there has been one day. Recently, it has been a little bit challenging, I will say. I think the most difficult part is the negativity. There's a lot of animosity and personal attacks when you put yourself out there to run for office. I think people think it's just free reign to attack you, to insult you, to attack your family. And so that's been difficult. And those attacks have been getting a little more targeted, and since we're getting further and further into the campaign, and we've picked up a lot of momentum recently, and so we're starting to see a lot more of those attacks, which, of course, my campaign says that's a good thing, because if they're not attacking you, then they're not nervous. But it's still difficult, right?
It doesn't mean I want to hear it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, do you turn off social media at a certain point, or what are some rules, personal rules for social media usage? Now that you are entering the sphere, and it seems like, I would imagine, most of the vitriol and hatred is coming from, Facebook and all the social media platforms.
Yeah, I try not to get too consumed with it at any one time. So what I mean is, I might check social media frequently throughout the day, but I try not to get so drawn into it that I spend, half an hour sitting there on Facebook going through things and I found that that's better for me. It used to be that I would limit social media to just maybe the morning, an hour in the morning. And then I try not to get on social media when my daughter's home from school, because I'm trying to spend time with her. But so I try to just focus. I used to try to focus and just this is my time to be on social media. But what I've found has been more successful and a little less, just easier for me overall is to check in maybe once an hour even, and then just kind of go through really fast. So I'm not really spending so much time, and then I'm just looking at alerts. Did somebody send me a message? Did they have a question? Things like that. I try not to get too drawn into the conversations, that are going in the threads, right?
Okay.
I might look through those after my daughter goes to bed. I might go through and spend some time actually reading them. But it's not so helpful. I haven't found that it's been very helpful for me to really spend too much time reading through those threads. So I really try to focus on very specific things. So if somebody has tagged me in a comment, or if somebody has sent me a private message, I try to go through those right before I go to bed.
So you respond personally to the private message? Wow.
I do, yes.
So I would imagine most candidates probably delegate that responsibility to their campaign or campaign manager.
Yeah, for sure. And so I write my own posts and those things too. And so a lot of people will say, tell Sarah this, I'm like, okay, I'll let her know. Then I had somebody one time say,
well, you're not the only politician who writes their posts. We'll just leave it at that.
Right. Yeah. Stop. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. I did have somebody
Maybe some politicians shouldn't write their own
posts. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I did have somebody say one time, well, you have a very good speech writer. And I was like, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'm my speech writer.
Yes. Did you tell them that?
I did.
Okay. I'm sure they enjoyed hearing that. Now, of course, one of the biggest challenges I can imagine, of the many and the multitude of the personal challenges, such as the negativity that you faced, it really is kind of running against an incumbent.
Yes.
Especially one endorsed by the president.
Yes.
And so kind of walk me through how you're navigating that challenge.
So I would say one of the biggest challenges in that aspect of it is that people are very worried about coming out and supporting me publicly. I have a lot of supporters who are kind of behind the scenes and doing what they can for me, and they support my campaign, they support me, and they're going to vote for me, and they're actually doing a lot of kind of grassroots organization and things like that, but they're very nervous to come out and publicly support me. So
why is that?
Because I think a lot of it has to do with it's difficult to beat an incumbent, right? And so they're looking at it from kind of, where is this going to lead them down the road? Like, if I don't win and they come out and publicly support me, how is that going to reflect upon them later on? And so, a lot of these people are very involved in politics, and they're very involved with the establishment, and to have endorsed or publicly supported somebody who's running against an establishment candidate won't look good for them in the future, right? They're not towing the line. And so I don't blame them. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. It's disappointing, but I think that's probably been the most difficult part. I mean, part of it obviously is fundraising as well. That's been really difficult, because running against an incumbent who has millions of dollars it's a really daunting task. But that's been part of it too. It's hard to get people to donate even just like $20, because it's, well, you're going against the establishment. Do you even have a chance of winning? And like we were talking about before, everything's public. So if you donate to a campaign, your name is on a public FEC report and people can see who you donated to. And so people are very nervous about donating.
And that's any amount, correct?
That's any amount.
Wow.
So
Any
even
amount.
if you give $10, it's on the FEC report. And so, the incumbent's camp can go through and see who donated to this candidate. And that makes people nervous too.
That's a sad thing that even has to be brought up in our politics today, but I'm sure very real, and really one of the things that the founders try to head off in the Bill of Rights. I mean, you have the right to petition, for redress of grievances, and I don't think that's what the founders would have envisioned, that there would be, vitriol or animosity directed towards someone simply because of who they supported in an election. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on it, and I don't want to delve too much in policy. Of course, the goal is just really to keep it apolitical, just broadly speaking. But what do you think is the appropriate term, or term limits, or amount of years? Let's say you had your way and could decide. What do you think you would make it for a senator? For a U.S. senator, I definitely don't think that if we keep the 6-year, each term at 6 years, I don't think that there's any need to have more than 2 terms. I'm a big proponent of term limits. Why do you think it doesn't get passed? And here's at least my take on it. Like, okay, why not just set it for, it doesn't apply to me, but it applies to the next people. I mean, I could at least see that. I could see why people who want to maintain their grip on power, which to a certain extent I don't blame them. But I could see that they wouldn't want to vote for it. But they might say, okay, for anybody who's coming next. Yeah, I agree. It applies to you.
I agree. I mean, I think that would be a great way to do it. I just think that there's too much. Nobody's going to introduce that, right? I mean, it's just not popular.
I volunteer.
Yes, but it has to be introduced in the Senate, right? I mean, they have to be.
Well, you do have the Convention of States.
We do, and that's been, one of the things that they've really been working on.
I think we're about 20 states now have signed up for the Convention of States.
And I mean, I think if it's going to pass, it's going to have to be something like Convention of States, and which I fully support.
Sure. And we're a little bit. I think it's 34 is the minimum number of states
to get
it
it
has
to be voted on. Yeah. And then I think you need 38.
That's going to be difficult. That's going to be difficult to climb.
It is going to be difficult, but it all goes back to the establishment. It all goes back to the incumbents, and the people who are already there are typically the ones who are, obviously they're the ones doing the policy, but you're asking them to go against something that would affect them, and even if they know it's right, they're just not willing to do it.
Or popular.
Right.
I would imagine term limits, I haven't seen recent polling, but I would imagine it's definitely more of a 60-40 issue at least. Maybe
I would
even more.
say, I mean, it's hard to say because, when you're running and you're on social media and you're getting information from people, it feels like everybody feels that way. And so I don't know the actual statistics.
The internet isn't real.
Exactly. I don't know the actual statistics, but from the way it feels is that very few people are opposed to term limits, even if they don't really endorse it or really promote it. I mean, very few people are actually opposed to it.
This concludes part 1 of our 2-part interview with Mississippi United States Senate candidate, Mrs. Sarah Adlakha. Thank you for listening to today's program, and we hope you will tune in next week for part 2. As always, let us continue to walk the Grace Way together.
Thank you for listening to The Grace Way. We hope today's message strengthened your connection to both the Lord and our ministry. If you have any questions you would like to have answered on the program or would like to connect with us, please email us at thegraceway@gbaos.org. Until next time, let us continue walking the Grace Way together.